Thank you, everyone. I can tell by the chat that continues, you probably all just want to go and find a bar at this point and set the world to rights, cry into a beer, maybe be excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. I'm going to take a short moment now just to review the role of Golf Course 2030. We've talked a lot about the opportunities and challenges for the industry ahead. We've heard from Bruno from a very strategic sense, and this is an extension of that and just an insight into the work that I personally am responsible for with Golf Course 2030. And most importantly, we'll then dip into one specific project with Valentine that we're very excited about, but we're excited about many different projects as I'll share them. So Golf Course 2030 is something that was established before my time with the RNA in 2019. It's very much established to be an outline or a direction or a program focused on supporting the industry practically. And I think that's what we've all discussed a lot today already. But one of the questions consistently came up from even before my time in the organization. What is it that we need to explore? What is it that we need to research and understand better? And we've talked about a lot today, haven't we? We've talked about the pressures and the threats, the opportunities and the concerns, the really detailed elements of what will create a more sustainable golf course, better playing surfaces, maintain the standards that we've become accustomed to. But we're also talking about what are the bigger issues, the bigger threats that Bruno started the day with. So Golf Course 2030 started off as a program, almost a pilot program within the UK, within Great Britain and Ireland, and it sought to explore what was the industry talking about, what did greenkeepers think, and club managers, office bearers, committee people, what did researchers and academics, what did the federations and the industry bodies think as priorities? And almost unintentionally, or perhaps it demonstrates the need that the industry had, we very quickly went from working in the UK to working across all of these different countries, and now even farther afield. More countries in the Asia Pacific region talk to us and want to develop plans and programs. More countries in Africa, and then even into South America as well. And as Bruno's alluded to, that opportunity to have discussions on a global level with other governing bodies in the game. It's massively exciting, but it's also massively challenging. So when we look at this diverse range of places around the world, from Singapore to Stockholm to Stoke-on-Trent in the UK, what was really interesting, fascinating perhaps, surprising, maybe not surprising to those in this room, is that despite such a diverse range of places, the challenges and threats faced by the industry are surprisingly consistent. So what do we need to do as an industry? We need to adopt more sustainable agronomic practices for our playing surfaces. We need to look at how we deliver better, or at least maintain the standards that we've become accustomed to. We need to explore responsible resource use, natural resources of course, but there's a range of different issues within that, and we've mentioned water and materials quite a lot today already, not to forget energy too. We've talked about biodiversity, nature, and that's a real opportunity. It came up actually within the feedback that all of you were putting into the application, into the app on your phones. It's a talking point in the industry, and it's a real opportunity. Not only the nature-based solutions that we talked about in terms of IPM, but also just into the wider perception, the PR, and the way that we present our sport. And we saw it yesterday at Sigtuna Golf Club, didn't we? And climate action, that again popped up in some of the feedback. Fossil fuels, carbon emission, carbon sequestration. What is golf's role and golf courses' role in the wider climate action agenda? And what do we want to tell the outside world, the communities that we are part of, we are doing for this fundamental global challenge? So I'm only going to dip into this briefly, and then we'll get into some of the real specifics here on agronomy. But we've awarded a range of different projects, and these numbers continue to go up. And we work with federations, STURF and the Scandinavian federations. We work with federations across Europe and now further afield, as I mentioned, to identify projects across these areas, and they can be diverse, ranging from literature reviews and handbooks, materials, collation of information, right the way through to practical field trials, golf courses, implementing the actions that we've talked about already and many others, trying to find solutions, figure out what is it that we can learn, and then share it. So a range of different projects, and then project publications and materials that go with it. But specifically because of the nature of today's conversation and the purpose of this event, I wanted to touch briefly upon our goals around sustainable agronomy. And again, we've talked about so many of these, but I'm going to emphasize one in particular. We need to promote that integrated turf management. We need to explore what the alternatives and the mechanisms that we have, or the tools we have in our toolbox, and in an era where legislation means we have fewer pesticides in our armory. But equally as important, and I keep hammering this one today, I've said it a few times, that communication piece, that discussion piece about standards and expectations. Wolfgang, you mentioned that just in the presentation before the break there. That idea of understanding what our tolerance is for playing surfaces. What do we expect going forward? And I try and politely put this as establish contemporary conditioning standards. What will golf courses look like in the future? Not what have they looked like in the past. And how do we communicate that to our customers, the people that watch it on TV, the people that sit at home, the people that pay their memberships, or the new golfers and the people that haven't yet fallen in love with the game. Very practically, I like to reflect on just some of my key takeaways. I mean, this is a handbook produced by STRI. Paul referred to a number of the pieces that came out of this already, and it's all available online, of course. But I think, and this is my opinion speaking entirely now, I think we've naturally reverted to exploring this idea of the disease triangle and addressing this pathogen issue continually. That's what the products have been there to do. And we've, again, talked a lot today about that favourable environment and addressing the host, or providing ourselves a turf grass and an environment that is more resilient. That disease triangle that Tanya shared earlier as well. And I think sometimes that requires a reminder to our industry, just my opinion. But equally extending that thing of conditioning and expectations, one of the projects, again delivered with STRI on a UK focus, but I think the principles are absolutely global here. The practices in each of these projects can be local, they can be centric to, and you will have to develop them for yourselves. But this green quality standard sought to provide an image or a graphic that articulated what is it we look for from our playing surfaces, these key playing surfaces that all golfers seem to focus on. So it's things like ball characteristics, ball roll, ball impact, but it's also things like the turf and the soil, the ability to be resilient to wear and tear, that disease pressure, that weed pressure, and then also all of these external pieces, moving into the far wider pieces, the resource pressures that you experience. How are we balancing all of these great pressures? So again, this piece of work sought to explore that and explain it, not only for those that understand these pressures, but probably more importantly for your fellow decision makers in clubs and facilities, other people in the industry that maybe don't necessarily appreciate what is coming or what we're already addressing. But that leads into an extension of another project related to course conditioning. The University Centre Myerscough, they started off saying, how do we set standards for golf playing surfaces beyond greens, bunkers, tees, fairways? What are the standards that we should aspire to? But that project evolved into something far greater and far more impactful into the wider sustainability of golf course businesses. Basically asking the question, what kind of golf course, golf club do you want to be? Because there is absolutely a place in the market for something more traditional or high standard, the things that maybe many golfers would aspire towards. But there's also a place in the market for something more accessible, where playing conditions and standards may not be the same. I don't say they're lower, they just may not be the same. They may have different values. And this comes into that experience economy that is so central to the development of the sport going forward. Because if we are going to drive the next generation of participants into our sport, we need to understand what they want from the game. And maybe family isn't the right word here, maybe it's new or different or contemporary. We have to understand the experience that we are providing to the consumers. And if your golf facility is able to understand and deliver that better, then you can put the limited resource, however much it is you have, time, money, volunteer hours even, into the things that matter most. So this project and this document sort of took on a life of its own, far beyond just setting standards for things like bunkers. And now those are only just 3 snapshots, because for me it's one of my great passions is genuinely just looking at the breadth of knowledge and experience, the opportunities that lie in this room. And and the range of different subjects. All of these have fact sheets and information sheets, project outlines within the RNA website. There's a link that you can access via the app as well, but you just have to go to the rna.com and sorry, rna.org. And these are some of the other projects that we've been working on in Europe, and a range of different ones within that sustainable agronomy messaging. So you can see, working collaboratively, working together, the industry is working very hard to try and bring these issues to the forefront. We are all working independently and together on key subjects and issues. And I'll never forget a conversation we had, Valentine, some time ago when we went through the process of asking the industry what kind of projects did you want to explore. Because I think it was you said to me, if your goal was to create conversation between countries, it was mission accomplished. And that's maybe something that addresses your point, Martin, around how does Europe, how does the industry as a whole come together to try and address these things? How do we put a more coordinated approach into research? It's early days still in many ways, but I'm very optimistic about the opportunities not only these projects, but future projects will bring. So there's the website you can go to if you so wish. I won't quickly click on while somebody probably takes a picture of that, but you can find it on the website. And one of the most common questions I get is asked, what is the RNA doing about? And you could almost fill in any number of subjects after that. And from a Golf Course 2030 standpoint, this is what we're doing. We want to research, we want to innovate, we want to work collaboratively to understand practical solutions and develop practical solutions for you to all adopt. We need to engage our key stakeholders. That can be people within the golf industry and those without, or out with, as Niels has alluded to. We need to communicate way better than we've done in the past, and this is hard work. I've worked in a golf club, I know what it's like, but we need to communicate the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead, because through that we will have better understanding across all of our stakeholders. Who can tell me where that is? That's St Andrews, the Royal and Ancient Golf. Now, it's a common picture. Many of you went, oh, I know that place, right? It's the 18th green of the old course. I like this picture because it tells me a very important message about what we think, right? This is a common picture. You know this place. So many of us in the industry are familiar with St Andrews and that picture of the 18th and a bridge. We know what it looks like, but this is a less common scene. Look at it. You don't often get to see the 18th green in the front of the clubhouse in that same way. And that's probably the way we need to look about the future challenges for our industry. It's the same place, the same golf courses that we've managed and worked so hard on for many years. We just have to look at it in a different way. With that, I'll hand over to Valentine and allow her to talk about her specific project. Please welcome Valentine.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. So here we go. So my name is Valentine. I just want to introduce you to our project. So this project is called Sustainable Agronomy, Alternative Methods to Dollar Sport Management on Sand-Based Putting Green. It was launched this year, but there's a bit of history and context which I'd like to introduce you to kind of explain to you how we got there, because that wasn't a project that just came out of nowhere and was born overnight. Can you all hear me properly? Yeah. Okay, excellent. Right, so just a research context. In 2018, for those of you who do not know, in June 2018 in Belgium, in Wallonia, so that's the southern part of Belgium, you've got Brussels South, we have got a ban that came out in a region. So this is a complete ban. We're talking pesticide, fungicide, insecticide, and all types of biocontrol that have the goal and the objective of fighting disease. So the law went as far as saying anything that you want to use against disease, you cannot. Basically, it's fertilizer and that's it. Obviously, our greenkeepers were completely ill-prepared. I'm not going to lie. It's the Federation, we didn't see it coming. It turned up 30th of June, and it was a bit of a disaster, I'm not going to lie. This was the kind of damage that we had, and if you talk to any of our greenkeepers, I'm not one of them, but I will very happily introduce them to you if that's of interest. They will tell you it was a hard time. We had clubs having to close for a few days or a few weeks because they couldn't handle it, because playing conditions were not good enough. They were ill prepared, and we really paid the price. To give you an idea, a year after the ban, we did a survey to all of our clubs. We've got 50% of response, and these were the results. It was obviously increasing cost. They estimated that on average, the green maintenance increased by 70%. The maintenance on tees increased by 25%, and on fairways by 30%. That gives you a bit of an idea. I will keep it to percentage because obviously a course that has 45 holes will be very differently managed. But on average, those were the numbers. In terms of turnover, because of closure, because of members that were complaining, they had a decreased turnover of 24,500 euros that year in terms of just decrease in turnover. We all know that golf clubs own especially like profit-making structures always, and so that was definitely a big hit for the industry. In terms of trees, well, it was actually a bad impact on biodiversity, even though obviously the law came from let's protect the environment. What turned out is that on average, every of our golf club cut 100 trees. Why? As we've been talking for 2 days, because they wanted to aerate the course more, because they wanted to just remove the roots, because a million of reasons that you all know, but we actually had to go and do it because that was the only way to survive. And well, lastly, and that's something I can't really give you data on, it's something that's just been said over and over again, and if that's a research interest for anyone, I think it would be a really interesting thing to look into, but carbon footprint has increased. The amount of mechanical compensation we've got to do to deal with that ban, it's far more impactful that maybe one biocontrol application or two, or maybe one fungicide per year. There's something there that it's unjust in terms of we're saying is for the goodwill and the positive impact on the environment, but actually in terms of a fossil fuel, sand resources, water resources, all the other resources we've got to actually take out to compensate the fact that we don't have any product is huge. All is not bad. We've gone a long way. So 2018, we're now in 2023. It's been 5 years, and golf courses are still a thing in Belgium. We still have players, and we've grown actually over the last 3 years massively. Like we've reached of 30,000 members, which for us it's big. We do have 38 golf clubs that still run, and no one has actually closed. So we managed. You can actually speak to Niels, who went to Belgium recently, and who did say, we do have playing condition in greens, and you can play a good party. So I've got one good news, is that it's not all bad. One bad news, I don't have a magic recipe, and I'm not going to present here the magic solution. I think the conclusion that we all will be having today from today is that it's a combination of a million things. We attack on one approach, but I think it will come from innovation, and is by collaboration, knowledge sharing, and doing what we're building this, and it's working together that we will be able to get there. I'm just going to present you our conclusions so far and how we've got into working with John and doing the research. So first of all, the first element that's been absolutely key for us over the last 3 years to get there has been data. I'm so glad that it's been mentioned in pretty much every presentation today. That makes my life so much easier. But that quote is just says what it has to say. You can have data without information, but you can't have information without data. So something that's been key to us has been disease outbreak forecast. So essentially providing greenkeepers with anticipation. They can't act after anymore. The only way for them to survive is making sure that Dullespot or Fusarium do not actually spread, do not turn up. And so helping them to see 48 hours in advance when the attack is coming, allow them to act preventively and get the right timing for it. So here I'm just showing you, it's been something we've been working on for a couple of years. So we have obviously the Smith-Kern model that we all know. Smith-Kern has its own limitation, especially in pesticide-free management, because it wasn't modeled for actually preventive care. It was modeled for fungicide application. And what we've been seeing is that our greenkeepers find it hard to actually, relate to, because 0 to 60, so 20 is a limit. It wasn't that natural to them. And on top of that, we've seen that in Belgium, in local condition, often we had attack, and you can see it, I'm not exactly sure here, but you can see it, for example, here, you have your yellow line in like low Smith-Kern level, but actually we had a super high attack. So we've been working through the models, we've been working through working groups where every single day we've got greenkeepers telling us exactly what they observe on site. We cross the data with the data we've been collecting, and we've been pushing the algorithm, the AI, the ML to actually get to where we want to be. And we're now at a stage where we've got localized forecast for our clubs. Not for all of them, but for all the ones that are involved in the research, we get there. And so we can see that one club is going to get attacked on the Friday, the other one on the Saturday, and that's really helping them. On that, sure, you've got the anticipation, it's turning up. Great, but what do I do now? On that, I'm not bringing anything that new here. Wetting agent, sulfate iron, I think that's a very well-known fact that it's helping. Why? Because it helped with soil moisture, it helped with suppress mycelia formation, and those has been the keys. Working with IoTs, working with connected sensors and dew sensors has been also key, because it's always about killing that dew, to suppress mycelia formation, to suppress dull spot formation. And so once you've got your sulfate iron, your wetting agent, afterwards you've got your dew and anticipating the when. The third aspect that we've been working on is mechanical work. And that's been top dressing, that's been rolling, that's been everything we've been talking about, which is key to us. I wrote a little quote, the difference between a perfect moment and a missed opportunity, because we still, our greenkeepers are still learning, we are still learning, and it's all about reactivity and the right timing. And we are realizing that when you do it is as important as what you actually do. And so that's been something that's we've always been trying to work and figure out exactly what is the right time to do the right action. The second thing we've been actually looking into is that it's great to put things, but it's not always about the what, as we said, is the where. And so soil health has been absolutely important to us. And so something we've been working on, and that really started the work with John, was looking at not only the kind of chemical balance on our soil, so pH, it's also a bit about the electrical potential of our soil. And so as you can see here, and if you're not familiar with this graph, I would highly encourage to read any of Huson's work. He does an amazing work in actually that research, and we've been finding a lot of information and help from him. So as you can see here, we would be in dollar spot, would be higher up in the kind of oxidizing space, and we're looking at always keeping our soil in the reduced area. So what we did a couple of years ago, we actually installed a pH sensor and a redox soil sensor. We've got two in our plot, and we've been able to monitor where we are. Obviously, keep in mind that this is I've plotted here the one that is our control plot, so that hasn't been seeing anything and it's just there. So obviously we're fairly high in the fungi section, but we're not too much in the kind of necrotrophic section, so it's quite good. Anyway, so we've been working on that, and actually making sure that we've got the right balance in the soil has been something we found that is also the key. As it's as important as, it's not just about the groceries and where you're going to actually feed, it's also about getting the right fridge and making sure that we can have the right environment to receive what we put. Again, that's to give you a bit of an idea what has been happening in 2023. And the third aspect has been a lot of homemade trials. Our greenkeepers we were seeing, you've got the 38 clubs, and all of them are trying different things at home, and they all have that kind of research trial green where they try the different stuff. And what we were saying is that it was all happening, but nothing was coordinated, and knowledge was just being lost, and energy was being lost, because everyone would put energy but in different direction. And so our ambition in 2022 was to actually start a research program and try to gather all that informal knowledge that they all had learned from 5 years of experience and surviving into something a bit more driven and organized. So what we did, that was last year, Origine Club, which is one of our club, and we did a practice green, which you saw just earlier, where we actually install a research trial. So it's a sandy substrate, it's creeping bent grass, 60%, 40% power, and it was on a putting green that's still being used by players. So it was very much in kind of real condition. Give you an idea of our methodology. So you've got the top, sorry, the colors aren't coming out as strongly as I thought they would. So the very top line was our control. Then you've got the green, which is biodynamization. I'll get back to that. The orange, which is different substances of natural defense elicitor, anything that could roughly more or less go through our legislation. And then the third line is the exact replication in terms of chemical substances, but added with mineral soil amendments. So I'll talk about this in a second. Our approach to the green bit was biodynamization. We realized that when we put, lots of people are saying we need to put microorganisms into a soil. The reality of our greenkeepers, they don't actually stay. And so what we've been focusing on, it's actually instead of trying to add some strain or some family of microorganisms, we look for them by function. So the idea is you take soil sample, you send them to the lab, they isolate the function. So the function here would be siderophore production or P solubilization. So in the ecosystem of the very soil of the golf course, we isolate the function, we find the strain that actually has that function in that ecosystem, we multiply it, and we insert in the golf course, which means that you've got your 5 clubs, they each get their own mix, if I may say, of the organism that carry the function that we want. And so that was the green part. The orange part was just classical, I would say more conventional approach. And then the blue part was the chemicals plus here, which was porous ceramic, zeolite, organic matter, and carbon sources. And that's been very much trying to work on macro and micro porosity and on the actual soil structure. This is just an actual details of everything we did. So you've got, lavender infusion, ammonium sulfate, amino acids, iron sulfate, ketosane. So you've got different approach. Again, if you have any question, I'm happy to go into more details. And in practice, that kind of looked like this. So that putting green became a research plot. And then we did the application every 2 weeks during 6 months. These were the results from last year. You had at the top, it's those siderophore, I think that's how you say it in English, but if I'm wrong in terms of pronunciation, excuse me. Pulverization, so you've got there the control, it's on the left. The one that has the soil amendment, so the soil enhancers and the product is on the right, and in the middle, you've just got the chemical product. And then you've got iron sulfate, again, the control, just iron sulfate, and iron sulfate with the soil structure enhancer. So to put down a graph, sometimes it's a bit more visual. This is what it looked like. It's quite clear, I would say, that we had good results and something was better than nothing. That was the main conclusion from last year. And the fact to work on the actual soil structure had an impact. So if we go back, the control, it's the gray, the yellow, it's when the different product we've put, and then the mix of the product and the soil enhancement, that was on the green. And so you kind of see everywhere that line going down and obviously showing some results. So here are the actual results. So the control plot did not receive any substance, had in total 324 spots. Spot sprayed with active substance had 30% reduction, and when we actually enrich and spread with substance, we had more than 3 times less dollar spot compared to the control. So that was obviously a very encouraging, but that was also supporting what our greenkeepers were seeing on ground. That approach, as I said, it wasn't me just signing up one day and saying we should do this. We've actually took our greenkeepers together and said, what have you been doing? What are you seeing that's working? What could we formalize into a test to see it a bit more clearly? These are the same result that I showed earlier, but with the actual numbers of dollar spot counts on the 16th of August. And you can see that, you know, we on some 1 meter square, we do go up to 40 spots, which the parcel at the end of the summer was just gone, and we could just reseed pretty much the entire aspect. That was also one of our greenkeepers accepting to kind of let go of one of his grain, because he couldn't actually do any form of management on that parcel for the whole summer. Right, so that was 2022, and then 2023 we obviously wanted to do more. We wanted to see if what we had was great, but we knew that it was only on one golf course, in one space. Realistically, it might just have been chance. So what we did was partner with Swiss Golf, and obviously with the RNA, become part of Golf 2030, and move from a 33 meter square research plot to 320 meter square. So essentially we replicated what we did in Régenay in 8 other clubs. So we've got 5 in Belgium and then 3 in Switzerland, which I've put on the maps over here. This is to give you an idea. We've changed a bit the setup, because as you saw, and a very easy criticism from our 2022 trials is that you had columns, right? You had the control, you had one approach, the second approach. So here we randomized the approach. So again, the colors aren't coming out. I should probably have put colors that are a bit more brighter, but you could see how we did it, which was 2 repetition. You had there, well, can you see the blue-ish? Just about. Well, the blue is a control. The red is just a product. Then red and yellow, it's product plus the soil enhancer. So it's just that we randomized far more, and then suddenly we were able to mix and match the different sites. All our greens were POA and creeping bends mix. Different mix, as you can see. Some of the clubs had loads of POAs, some of the clubs were very creeping bends. They're all different standards, different mowing heights. The whole idea was to bring some variation, some climatic change, and actually just replicate to see if what we had observed in Régenay could be applied more widely. Oh, here we go. That's a bigger parcel setup. Again, here is just to show you the randomization that we did. And this was the plot that the greenkeeper would receive in his training to be then able to apply the protocol that we had developed. So just to give you the roadmap, after I'll try to give you some pictures to visualize a bit more what we did. But in March, we went to Switzerland, we met the greenkeepers, we explained to them what we're doing and explained to them the approach we did. In April, we were meant to start. We had extremely cold weather in Switzerland, and temperature at night were under 10 degrees. So realistically, starting with microorganisms wouldn't make much sense because they would be all dead anyway. So we decided to push the start of the research to May, when temperature were nicer. And so we will be going a bit more into November when we're finishing the research. In June 2030, so we got the first dollar spot outbreak, and that's where it all very much started. Spoiler alert, I'm very happy for the clubs, but I'm quite sad for the research. This year we had a very weird summer, as we've all established here, which means that we only had 3 outbreaks. So by the time I prepared that presentation, so out of the 8 clubs, only 3 had dollar spot. The 5 others we didn't have. The reality is that our summer has been much drier, less humidity, just loads of dryness, and so we haven't had the same conditions. So this is us in Switzerland installing the weather station, the soil sensor, the dew sensor. Each club has those sensors to be able to, control for the climatic condition that we have locally. And we were explaining to them how to actually do it. And so explaining how we set up the plot, etc. So this is site plotting in Belgium, that as well, and this one as well. So obviously, because we did 1 in 2022, we had 4 more to do in 2023. And then that's a site set up in Switzerland. So we work with Dirk and Alicia kind of on a weekly basis. They've been looking after the research, and then we've been looking after the analysis and gathering all the data, so that the dollar spot, for example, counting is made by one person, because otherwise we're going to get subjective results. So this is to give you an idea of the start of the testing. You can obviously see which one are the iron sulfate. I don't need to explain that to you. It's fairly obvious. But that gives you a bit of an idea of how we've been doing it, which is probably, as for those who work in NIMBU, quite common. But that's been our approach, because we've been working on trying to do a protocol that's easy enough so that greenkeepers and day-to-day groundsmen can actually follow, because obviously we don't have the capacity to just go to all places at all times. So that was the disease outbreak in June. As I said, we only had 3 clubs, 2 in Belgium, 1 in Switzerland. The others have been dollar spot free until August. Good news is, I mean, we had a big outbreak end of August, so I'm hoping September will become a bit more interesting in terms of results. Trends observed, I'm going to be very, very careful here. This is very early on, and I'm not going to disclose anything that is then going to become a big conclusion that wasn't the case. So, I mean, iron sulfate works. Great, no one knew this in the room. So this is pretty much what we've been observing, nothing that we didn't know. Something though I'm quite excited about, and it's been helping us a lot, is the oxygen measurement. So we have a oxygen sensor, and we take a measurement on the oxygen level in the soil on a regular basis. And because we didn't have any disease outbreak, we kind of compensated with more data, because that's fun. And we are seeing a lot of information, and that sensor is giving us even more information that we wanted on the importance on oxygen level and the capacity of dollar spot to actually turn up. So that's something that we'll be looking more into in the future. And then those are the first observation. Again, this is observation, don't take it as conclusion, please. Control is in red. The key bit is, if you look at the yellow line, you very much have your yellow line pretty much systematically under your red one, which sulfite iron does help. Something I want to put, because you're all going to tell me, yes, but here, what happens here? It's huge. Like, control is basically good and the others are wrong. We had a very, very big flood in July, where the golf club got 70 mil within 1 day, which obviously it was all flooded. And so at which point, well, I think that may have explained the why and the how of just pretty much anything that you were want to do would go away, and we had the actual place flooded for a couple of days. And otherwise, well, you kind of see what we've been doing. So what we're seeing is that we are observing something with those microorganisms. There is an effect. We are seeing something around iron sulfate. That is where I'm going to stop and put that picture, which is all the team that's been working very hard this year on the data collection and the research. Thank you for your time.
This might take some time to start. Thank you very much. Interesting, and I'm sure the scientists in the room, I can see them baying with questions and queries, and I'm going to have to stall them until after we conclude, in the interest of time, and also with respect to our next presenter. So yeah, fascinating insight into one specific Golf Course 2030 project. Is that working now? Wonderful. An insight into one project, but there are many others, and I should say thank you to Alicia and to Dirk for the work they do in Switzerland. And it's a great example of how we aspire for collaboration across Europe and beyond to demonstrate how we can practically trial and deliver research. I'm going to go through this. Those were all your extra slides, Valentine. Okay, so our final concluding presentation is really about reflecting on the opportunities that have been taken at a very practical way, but also reflecting on the hard work that we do and my colleagues do so well in our agronomy team, specifically for some of the highest profile events in the world. And for us, this demonstrates our appetite and our ambition to demonstrate that it's not just about practices at all levels. It's about demonstrating to the wider industry and indeed wider communication to golfers and to the stakeholders in the game that we are committed to this sustainable practice. So without furthermore, I will hand over to someone who I genuinely regard as a great mentor and someone that's guided me a lot, my colleague, Richard Windows. Please welcome Richard.
Thank you. We're on. Right, can everybody hear me to start with? There, good, excellent. Thank you for that introduction. What a great day it's been today. I've learned an awful lot about the pressures that you're all under in Scandinavia. My job today is to try and gather all of the great things that we do as an industry into the delivery of championship golf on the world stage, I suppose, where we see the best players in the world, whether it be amateur, professional, men, women, boys or girls, playing on sustainably managed golf courses using sustainable agronomy practices. In our department, in our team, in the sustainable agronomy team covering our championship venues, our mission statement is to deliver sustainable and environmentally positive world-class playing conditions for R&A championship golf courses. We need to challenge the best players in the world. We need to do that using sustainable agronomy practices. We need to champion nature and biodiversity. Our golf courses are great for nature. We need to protect them and enhance them and finally use the platform of our championship golf courses that we see on the TV to champion everything that we're doing in this room, everything that is great about the industry and which is great about sustainable agronomy practices. It's not just the Open. Obviously, the Open is the jewel in the crown. Our 10 Open Championship venues across the UK. We visit each of those championship venues at least twice a year. Somebody asked me last night, how often do we visit? It'll be twice a year, and then as we get into the final year of the championship, which is obviously Royal Troon in 2024, I'll be working very closely on a monthly basis with the host venue greenkeeping team to deliver the golf course to the best possible standard that it can be, but I reiterate, using sustainable agronomy practices. We also work with the golf course architect. In most cases, it's Mackenzie and Ebert, working towards future Open Championships. So this winter will be a busy winter for us. There's projects going on at Royal Birkdale, which is going to host the 2026 Open, to change some of the holes on the golf course, perhaps new tees, some new bunkering, but everything that we do with regard to course development is looking to take any opportunities to minimize resource use, optimize kind of the sustainable practices, develop the nature and biodiversity of the golf course. In recent years, when the R&A and the Ladies Golf Union combined, we now run the AIG Women's Open. That is, last year was hosted here at Muirfield. This year it was hosted in Walton Heath down in London. We're not a links course, it's a Heathland course. So we're on a different course type. We also work with all of our professional qualifying championships. So the final qualifiers, of which there's 4 for the men, 2 for the women, and 13 regional qualifying events across the UK. We're quite busy. We also, I've gone too far, we also work with all our amateur championships, so whether that be the amateur for the men, the women's amateur for the women, obviously, the boys and girls, all the matches, the high profile ones will be the Walker Cup, the Curtis Cup, amongst many, many others. So in total, we have about 65 championship venues on our portfolio of R&A championships that me and my colleague Adam Newton visit. What you'll notice is they're a very different type of course. They're predominantly links, but there's Heathland in there, like Walton Heath. Our regional qualifiers and our amateur championships are played in parkland situations, and they're all across the UK and Ireland. So there's different course types, different geography, different climatic conditions across that particular area. So the challenges, whilst they're all generally the same, there's some kind of, we're dealing with kind of different grasses, different soils and different environments. What are the things, what do we think about when we're starting to sort of work with our host championship venues? It's pretty much everything that we're all thinking about in this room. The top one, first class performance. Yes, we're trying to produce a golf course that is challenging the best players in the world and is championing everything that is good about greenkeeping. So we're trying to produce smooth, true, well-placed putting surfaces that receive a well-struck shot, that is presented well. Authentic is a great word. We want the golf course to be authentic to the original design and strategy of the original architect. That also, we want it to be authentic to the prevailing weather conditions of the summer. Somebody talked to me last night about Royal Liverpool, how Royal Liverpool this year, it rained a lot. So the golf course was relatively green compared to maybe 2006 when you remember Royal Liverpool, what was burnt out was the colour of the table. It reflects the weather patterns or the prevailing weather patterns of that particular year. We also we talked about kind of sward type and how the environmental pressures of the particular golf course reflect the vegetation that we're trying to produce. So, as a really nice example, somewhere like Royal Troon, which is going to host the Open next year, it's on the Ayrshire coast. It's a relatively wet part of the UK. The soil pH is pretty low. It's acidic. It naturally favours brown top bent grass. So we have 80% brown top bent or colonial bent grass at Royal Troon. We go over the water or over to the east coast into Carnoustie. It's drier, it's alkaline, it favours fescue. So we're trying to produce, we're not fighting against nature, just like what Martin, we are working with nature to produce golf courses of the highest quality. Control's a great word. I started this job 20 years ago and I remember kind of this being drilled into me for Peter Dawson, the previous chief executive of the R&A. He said, the most important thing, Richard, is we deliver the claret jug at 6:30 on Sunday. Right? So what does that mean from an agronomy point of view? It's about control. We don't want greens that get too fast. We don't want greens to get too dry. We need to keep them predictable. We need to keep them under control. One of our biggest challenges is almost kind of keeping green speed sort of tempered. So keeping them around that 10-foot mark to challenge the best players, and just like what Paul was talking about earlier, to ensure that we can use all these wonderful hole locations on our amazing kind of open championship venues that have got superbly contoured greens. Responsible input, massive part of what we do. You know, I feel that it is a huge responsibility of mine and my colleague Adam and Paul and John and everybody who's kind of working in sustainable golf to ensure that we're maintaining these golf courses in the public eye to the world's best players with minimal inputs of fertilizer, pesticide and water. We follow the rules, and we follow the rules really, really hard. And that's an incredibly important part of what we do, and then tell everybody about it, how we're doing it. So those kind of golfers sat at home watching it on Sky Sports or whatever it might be, understand that what we're doing is the same as what kind of the wider industry are doing. Big one, which I'll talk about, habitat and biodiversity. When our staging team comes, and those of you been to the Open in recent years will notice how much bigger, everything's bigger. We've got bigger infrastructure, more grandstands, more hospitality, more car parking, all these things. But we need to make sure that when we stage that championship, we are protecting the natural habitat and environment. We're not causing any damage. So much so, as a little story, Bob Taylor, who works, some of you may well know him, who's our ecological consultant from the championship. Swallow's nest was found in the scoreboard to the left of the 17th hole at St Andrews in 2015 Open. It's illegal to damage or disrupt a nesting bird. That scoreboard was duly closed for the championship. Just shows you, just as a tiny wee example, how important we take the whole kind of habitat protection and biodiversity element. Lead by example, I've touched on that. It's kind of, as I said, I feel that it is sort of our responsibility to ensure that amongst all of you here are championing everything that is great about sustainable agronomy practices. But what do we do? And I really enjoyed listening to Martin earlier, Stefan earlier this morning. None of this is difficult. None of this is kind of particular rocket science. It's talking about a healthy soil profile with well-managed organic matter, good root development, minimal kind of, or no layering ideally. But remember, we're talking about golf courses that have been here for 100 years. So there's some layering, but that good biology, everything about that soil profile is a big focus of what we need to do to be able to deliver all the things that I'm talking about and provide platforms for the best players in the world. Last year at St Andrews, you know, the weather was good to us. it allowed us to dry the greens down to perhaps levels that we haven't been before, to produce very, very high levels of surface firmness. They're averaging around 158 gravities. But we could only do that because we had the right grass composition, we had the right soil, the soil profile was managed in the right way with carefully controlled organic matter, and we had great rooting. So that plant could suck up nutrient and moisture from a great depth within the soil profile. Some venues were not particularly lucky. We're working hard to improve that soil profile with kind of new techniques such as the sand injection, which you can see here, the top changer in action. We're finding that incredibly useful to add additional sand into that upper soil profile to increase bulk density, to increase surface firmness. The other key thing, this is one of our key objectives, and is to ensure that we grow the right grasses that provide predictability, that provide sustainability with minimal inputs of fertilizer, pesticide and water, that provide us the control, that provide us with the year-round performance, not just the week of the Open Championship. So we're very lucky, and this is a legacy of 20, 30 years of good agronomic and greenkeeping practices. Certainly all our Open Championship venues are dominated by brown top bent and fine fescue, with the blends varying dependent upon the different geography or different climatic conditions of that particular golf course. Now, kind of as I said, somewhere like Royal Troon is bent dominant, somewhere like Carnoustie, Royal Portrush, fescue dominant. But the key thing is all the open venues and women's open venues are dominated by the fine grasses. We've talked a bit about data today. Data, probably, well, certainly since 2010, is really underpinning the agronomic advice that we are providing our championship venues and our wider venues generally. Really like what we just talked about earlier, that this whole process is informing accurate decision making. It's not just data for data's sake. There's two elements of it. There's the field performance, but also the soil lab performance. Working with our partners, ETL, back in Scotland, we've been measuring organic matter for a good 12 years now. It's very important that we manage our organic matter accurately in that upper soil profile to provide the resilience, to provide the turf quality, but crucially to provide that surface firmness that we want, to challenge the best players, again, I keep saying that, to challenge the best players in the world. We're also looking kind of at the soil physical properties of that upper soil profile. So its porosities, its hydraulic conductivity, so how it drains, but also kind of in more recent years, the bulk density, so how it all packs together. So we know that organic matter holds moisture, reduces softness, so we manage organic matter, but we also need to start understanding how the physical nature of that soil profile works to get high bulk density, to challenge, to produce these real high levels of firmness. We can only do that with lab analysis. And it also helps us really reduce our inputs. We're generally doing less and less to our championship venues. Less is more. It's very much kind of a bit of a mantra going on. And we're working out that these profiles are really good. They've got great root development, they've got great drainage. We don't need to be punching huge amounts of holes in them all the time because of the sort of the legacy of work that is perhaps been done. Then it comes to the stuff, if you like, the data collection during the championship to try and achieve target, right? So achieving target, that the exam paper is set by our core setup team. That means kind of what sort of green speed we want, where the whole location is going to be, what level of surface firmness do we want to try and achieve. That's the exam paper that us and the greenkeeping team set to achieve. A fairly intensive process of data collection is taken 2 weeks from, well, the week before the championship. So we measure green speed every day, mainly to 2 locations of the green. You might be thinking, what on earth is that plastic tunnel on the 17th green at St Andrews? That is a wind tunnel to ensure that the wind does not affect green speed values. Even in a 10-mile-an-hour wind, it could affect the green speed values by anywhere between 10 and 12 inches. So if we're looking to try and achieve a target and implement action to achieve a target, we need to know that the data that we get is absolutely accurate. Secondly, you can see here kind of using a Pogo soil moisture meter, which takes a GPS fixing of soil moisture. Every time it inserts into the ground, we would normally do one insert every 7 steps across a putting surface, so we're probably receiving about 50 to 60 individual measurements across the green. That informs our irrigation input that following evening. So you can see the red spots, the dry bits, that informs kind of where we need to potentially focus any hand watering. Why? 2 things: control, performance, but most importantly, minimizing input. Don't need to apply water to the green bits, just need to apply water to the red bits. So again, that comes back to our responsible input. So all this information is gathered, and then there's a debrief at the end of it. With us, with the course managers, we can really understand in fairly forensic detail on how those surfaces perform, where we need to focus the next 10 years of agronomy until the next championship comes along. None of this takes away from the art of the greenkeeper. Absolutely crucial to the whole process of how if you take hand watering as an example, the quality and the accuracy of the hand watering process, just to get the minimal amount of moisture onto those red areas on greens. Crucially important. And the timing, we talked about the timing, somebody talked about the timing today. When to do things. It's crucially important for kind of delivery at this sort of level. And then something else that we've talked about. This is what today's about and last night. People and relationships. In this industry, we're so lucky to have great people. We are very lucky to work with great people at our championship venues, but that goes across the land. What superb turf talk we've had over the past 24 hours. What superb collaboration, sharing information, sharing ideas. Paul talked about that thought leadership. That's what all this is about, and that is kind of, very much kind of what our role is when it comes to championship venues, working together collaboratively as a team to achieve the end goal. Another little thing just to maybe talk about, the bottom right slide here. At our championships, we advertise to our network of RNA greenkeeping scholars, of which there is now 432 across the world, and we advertise out every year to have 2 or 3 greenkeeping scholars helping Adam and I as part of our data collection process. So it's an incredible opportunity to work for 2 weeks behind the scenes with us. Well, it might not be an opportunity, it depends how you see it, working behind the scenes at the championship, working kind of on these particular golf courses. There's some wider sustainability initiatives that we are constantly trying to introduce to keep on top or abreast with innovation and technology, and to also kind of really tick these bigger sort of sustainability goals. One great success last year, followed up again this year at Royal Liverpool, was the use of all-electric triple mowers for the first time in a global championship. So we use Toro reflexes to cut the greens. The greens at St Andrews are massive. They're over 2.5 hectares. So hand mowing greens in itself is pretty difficult. So in the past, we didn't really want to use triple mowers in case we had the dreaded hydraulic oil leak. So with technology now that we have all electric mowers, we utilised them with great effect last year, allowing us to talk about some positive wider sustainability messages, such as we reduced carbon dioxide emissions by up to 90% by using these. We're hoping, and this is where collaboration with the wider industry, our machinery partners, is we're hoping to get these bigger aspects of machinery, so your fairway mowers, your green surround mowers, your rough mowers, all electric. And we're hoping that at Portmarnock for the women's amateur this year, everything during course setup will be electric. That would be a massive breakthrough. Massive breakthrough. Yes, they're expensive, but these are the sort of things that we can be doing at our championship venues to sort of showcase to the wider world. We're lucky, certainly at all our open championship venues, a lot of our championship venues we can harvest indigenous resources. I was talking to, I think it was Rob earlier, about this. Historically, at our 10 open venues, we were importing sand from quarries around the UK and Ireland. We can now, using our advice from Bob Taylor from an ecology point of view and working with the statutory bodies, whether it be Nature Scotland or English Nature, we can start harvesting indigenous sources of sand for top dressing greens, tees, fairways, but also create new habitats. open sand areas on our links courses are fantastic for a number of different rare species, and the statutory bodies are very happy for us to harvest these areas of sand for that reason. And by the way, we can take some top dressing for the golf course, significantly saving on kind of carbon, what am I saying? Significantly saving on, yes, that's the word, yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of big break. There's something else I want to say on that. And also, I talked about bulk density earlier. That sand packs better together, so it gives us a higher level of surface firmness. I've got 2 slides left. Habitat protection. We work with Bob Taylor and Sophia Lennox in the lead to all times at our championship venues, and in the lead up to the Open Championship and AIG Women's Open Championship, to ensure that the golf course is protected. Any vulnerable or rare species are cordoned off to ensure that spectators don't go through those areas. If we're building grandstands in areas, we make sure that there's no ground nesting birds, because the protection of the wilder habitat, the skylark doesn't know the open's coming. So it's very important to us that we protect the wider habitat. That's top picture. That's the Hell bunker at St Andrews on the old course. There's some plastic netting on that bunker because sand martins like to nest in the gaps between the revetted faces. We had to shut the Hell bunker for the 2016 Senior Open at St Andrews. I think it was 2016 Senior Open, because sand martins nested into the revetted faces. So again, shows you how important that we hold things. Final slide, nature and biodiversity. We've just embarked, this is year 2 of a really exciting project looking at the nature value or the biodiversity value in key metric form of our golf courses generally, but we're focusing on 27 championship venues. We're actually recording the number and the extent of species across these 27 golf courses, and it's unbelievable stuff so far. We all know in this room that golf is good for nature. This project is starting to put metrics on it and proving it to the wider world. So we can stand in front of the TV camera or the non-golfing public, say golf is really good for nature. So far, on average, these 27 golf courses host over 220 individual species. Some of the rarest and most endangered species are harboured on our golf courses. We're starting to be able to kind of talk about this in a proper scientific way, which is really cool. Then I guess part of my other job is like influencing people doing this sort of thing. We get the opportunity with our media partner Sky to talk about kind of sustainable agronomy practices, golf and nature, all these good things, electric mowers on greens. So I get the opportunity to stand in front of Sky Sports talking about these things, and I feel that is my duty to everybody within the industry to champion sustainable agronomy practices. It's the thing that keeps me awake at night, thinking, crikey, am I doing a good job at that? I'm trying my best, as is everybody in this room. Who's going to make one more last point? So yeah, that's a sort of a whistle-stop tour of championship agronomy. So it's very much enhancing or using all the knowledge that we've got about sustainable agronomy practices, minimizing input of fertilizer, pesticide and water to create the best playing surfaces to challenge the best players in the world. And at that point, I'm going to finish.
Thank you, Richard. A fascinating insight, and there's perhaps a degree of poetry in having taken this journey from Sigtuna Golf Club yesterday, which Lars, the club president, described to me as, we're like 300 other golf clubs in Sweden, John, and I absolutely loved it. Right the way to an example of one of the most highest, or some of the most high-profile golf facilities in the game. But the messages are always consistent. That biodiversity matters, that golf is good for nature, that we are innovative, that we are progressive, that we seek to reduce our inputs, that ultimately we're all working very, very hard to convey the important message that golf is and will continue to innovate and develop new solutions to the pressures we face. And indeed, tell the story that golf can be part of that sustainability story for the wider world.